No, no. All right, I'm going to go. Thank you so much for thinking of me. I'll see you a little bit later. Okay, bye.
Hello everyone, how are you? This is Cantor Gaston Vayeira, broadcasting from North Miami Beach, Vector Avenue Road Campus. This is Conversations with the Clergy. And I welcome everyone who's here, everyone who's here for the first time. So we have half an hour in English and then we have media hora en Español. And I want just to talk about a very important subject, which, you have Parashat Vayeira. So I have great subjects, right? You have the circumcision of Abraham. Then you have, from there we already learned, the mitzvah of Bikur Cholim, which is to visit the sick, right? God himself appears to Abraham, and visiting him when Abraham just had, the third day of his circumcision, of the Brit Milah. Second, we know on the same situation, in the same scene, then Abraham sees three men. He doesn't know they're angels. He sees three gentlemen and he runs. Even if he had just had surgery, he's injured, right? I mean, if a Brit Milah, they said on the third day, it hurts, then, believe me, it hurts, when you're 99 years old and you just had the circumcision. So he runs no matter what. It doesn't matter. He runs and he's Abraham. Abraham is Abraham, he goes and feeds them and runs for it and everything. So another great subject we learned from there, what we call Achnasat Orchim, to welcome our guests, to be a good host, to welcome people not just in your house, but to really be nice and kind with others. So already we have great subjects. Now, then we have a great subject of Sodom and Gomorrah, right? So Sodom and Gomorrah, and God is going to destroy it, and then we have the great subject also of Abraham arguing with God, so being, standing for others and standing for what he feels that is just and justice, as we say even then in Deuteronomy, Deuteronomy, it's a tzedek tzedek tildov, justice you shall pursue. So Abraham is kind of the first ones who is there for justice, and they hear the big comparison all the time back and forth with. With Noach. Noach didn't protest when God said he was going to destroy the world. Now we have Abraham, and he protests that he's going to destroy the world. Say even if you find 50 just people, 50 righteous, and 40 and 30 and 20, not even 10 were there, so he had to destroy. We have the great subject of, it's an amazing, parasha. Have a great subject of Lot's wife. Okay, we don't know her name or anything, but we have the great. That she looked back and then she became a sculpture of salt. Now, we have the great subject of incest. in history for the first time, right? So the after the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah and the other three cities, around there, we know very well that Lot, Lot and his daughters, his daughters think that is the end of the world, that they were the only ones in the whole world, and they're very preoccupied and worried about how they're going to be humanity again. So they kind of raped his father. They give him something to drink. He gets drunk, and then one night one of daughter, and then the other daughter the next night. We know that from there also great subject, amazing subject also that we get that from the daughters of Lot, and the daughters of Lot and Lot, they bear these kids, right, which is Ammon and Moab. And later on, we know very well that those are very important nations that become even something very related to the Mashiach, the Messiah. So in other words, it's a great parasha. Oh my God, what we read every year on Rosh Hashanah. What is it? The Akedat Yitzchak, the binding of Isaac. And so subjects all over the place. But I want to focus on something different today. So my subject today is Abram and Sarah. Is this the first divorce in history? We saw a few weeks ago in Breshit that something happened between Adam, according to the Midrash and to the Kabbalah and other, medieval books, that Adam and Eve might have divorced or gotten divorced. And then we know how we got into Li, into Lilith, which we have the custom in not pronouncing her name. We did a whole lesson. If you want to watch that, just go back a little bit on the Facebook a few weeks ago, and I talked about that. But let's analyze a little bit what happened here and the role of Sarah. The role of Sarah in all this. Next week, we're going to talk about Chayei Sarah, which is the death of Sarah. So we don't talk so much about how she lived her life and how important she is, and what does it mean, to all of a sudden, have a husband who has the characteristic as Abraham has. So it's interesting in this interesting book. This book is called the Musar Torah Commentary. This is a spiritual path of living, meaning an ethical life from Rabbi Barry Block. In each parasha, is suggested one or two or three different midot, kind of like part of our personal traits or character traits that we can work on. Each parasha is related to each of them, and that's how it goes. And the parasha, Rabbi, specifically, he is written by Rabbi Alexandra Shubal Weiner, who writes that this parasha is related to the midah of alacrity, what we call in Hebrew zerizut, alacrity. That means actually promptitude, in a way of trying to do things right away. So it explains here that it's Rabbi Lutzato, who is one of the eminence of Musar, it says that zerizut, this midah, this character trait of zerizut, of alacrity, he describes this as the immediate engaging in mitzvot and their completion. As the sages of blessed memory said, the zealous are early to perform the mitzvot. So, in other words, it seems that this midah is totally in the DNA of Abraham Avinu, of Abraham. So, meaning in a way that anything that happened, Abraham didn't really thought twice about anything. Here are a few examples. So at the opening of the parasha, right, we read, looking up, right? Vayeira elav, that's what we see, right? Right away. And so it says Vayeira elav, and that means in a way, right, that he kind of look up, right? and he saw three men. That's coming later on. You know, he's looking up over here. Vayisa einav vayar vayine shlosha anashim. So he saw these three standing opposite him, and then he see them vayar, right? And he ran vayar vayaros. That's kind of like he ran into it. So we already kind of get an idea of who Abraham was. It doesn't matter if he was injured or hurt. Then it says that Abraham is shown a rushing to fulfill the mitzvah of achnasat orchim that was said before. Now, we have that all the time in the in his characteristics, and it's very very common on Abraham to do that. And then he's ready to do the hospitality, and then we when he had the problem with the Sodom and Gomorrah, nobody says anything in the city, but then he runs and he talks to God right away. Same thing, looking for mercy, for rachamim, to looking for justice. And at the same time, if we move further in the parasha, we have Abraham's decision making seems now to become more challenged. So in a way, that he makes some decisions. For example, we know those Okiva, it says that he woke up in the morning by Ashkem Abraham Baboker, when God told him about the binding of Isaac to go and sacrifice his son. He doesn't think twice. He's still being the same person with this midah, with this amazing midah in his DNA, this suit, this alacrity, and he's still running even for things that are so challenging as to go and sacrifice, kill your own son. So the same thing also, happens when he doesn't think twice about saying that Sarah, his wife, is his sister when they confront the king Abimelech, because he's afraid that she's so beautiful that they're going to kill him because he says it's his wife. And so there are things, in essence, that zerisut, this alacrity, this idea of being rushed into do the mitzvah, or rushed into decisions, that we can probably compare a little bit to, of what could be also impulsivity, right? So it might be that Abraham was a little impulsive, and sometimes he, like in our lives, and we can think about this, he got to be a little impulsive in this, and that's okay. I mean, and it happens to us. We are impulsive many times. Sometimes we don't think about it. There are people who just think a little twice. Sometimes people think more than they need to think about something. Some people just don't give a thing or a thought or anything, and they just go straight because they have this DNA of the impulsivity. Impulsivity is not a bad thing. It's not something you do wrong. It's your impulse, right? I mean, there's an impulse to do something, and most of the times probably it's great, because how many people get falls into laziness or fear or lack of faith just for thinking too much, or because my wife used to say in her conferences, the one who thinks loses. So in Espanol we say el que piensa pierde. Well, maybe the one, if you think so much, then you don't get to do some things. If you give so much or you will overthink, you might actually stop anything that you wanted to do. Sometimes decisions have to be made, and then you just carry with the decision, and that's okay. It's life. We make decisions, then we learn from them. But if you're all the time like, do I do it? Do I don't do it? Do I do it? Do I don't do it? Then then you just fall into something different. Now, so that was the first part I want to tell, because to understand what type of husband Sarah had. So now Sarah is a very interesting characters here too, and something happened in this parasha that sometimes overlooked. I don't think it's overlooked by everyone, but sometimes that doesn't get so much to be talked about, which is the relationship these two have. First of all, I mean, we had this person, we have Abraham, right, who is afraid about this king and the king, and then he lies about being. And we know that there are troubles, Abimelech, God appears in a dream of Abimelech and says that don't touch that woman. And Abimelech gets so pissed off and so mad and upset and said, why did you do that to me? So it seems that Abraham, because having this type of midah, of these character traits, he doesn't allow for him to fully see what type of wife he has. And let's take this into our own lives. How many are the times that we as people might have with our partner, and we are like doers, and sometimes we live in the impulse and in the run, and we don't get to appreciate who do we have. So Abraham, there's even at the beginning, he already identifies, says, you look, you're so gorgeous, right? Like, and a lot of rabbis, ask themselves, as the sages, it's like, I mean, it was about time for you to really see that your wife is beautiful. And it doesn't mean that, in the Torah it says, kind of like the same as Joseph, that saying that she was beautiful, right? Even like Esther, that she was before Torah. I mean, that they were beautiful, that she's good looking, handsome, right? And that doesn't mean actually that he doesn't identify that Sarai is beautiful also from the inside. But first of all, is this idea. Just bear in mind this thing that sometimes we are just on the run, or we have someone next to us all the time, even our own kids, right? Even our parents, and we don't find the beauty, the tiferet, the bountiness of the bountifulness of having someone and appreciate that person. So that's kind of like, I would say strike number one, not identifying or not looking enough at the person you have next to you all the time. In this case, if it's your wife, to see how beautiful she or he is. So that's Abraham, right? Who is like almost like, like a horse, just going straight all the time. And he has the chesed, like he's a good man. I mean, it's not like he's not a good man. It's just that he just had that tendency. And then when he realizes, and then all of a sudden, when he realized, then he's afraid of introducing Sarah as his wife instead of his sister. But then after that, they made like Abraham made so many mistakes. God says specifically something very important to Abraham. And he says, and I want to read from you here, which is in chapter 21. He says something very, very important. Right. Which is 21, getting there. So it's 21, 12. This is 20, almost there, 21, 12. It says, Vayomer Elohim el Abraham, it says, Al yira ve'enecha al הנער ועל המדגה, כל אשר תאמר אליך שרה שמע בקולה, כי ביצחק יקרא לך זרע. So it says, do not be distressed over the boy of your slave. Whatever Sarah tells you, do as she says, for it is through Isaac that offspring shall be continued. So here's a big phrase that a lot of people, for couples counseling, right? Here's what you want to know and what you need to know. Whatever she says, right? And do as she says. Well, I'm sorry, if you are heterogeneous and you have a wife, right? Just do and listen to her. Always to say, listen to your wife. There are many books and many sources where it says that your wife that God speaks through your wife's mouth. And remember what we learned also at the beginning of the Breshit, also a few weeks ago, that we remember about the whole idea of Ezel Lenegdo, right? I mean, that God is going to keep a helper who's going to be opposition all the time. So whatever your wife says, do it. Listen to your wife. Listen to your advice. Listen to her advice. Listen what she has to say. So that's important enough. Then we have other situations when we learn, when specifically Sarah is told that she's going to have a kid, right, from these three angels. But it's interesting, to know she laughs and says, am I going now to have the pleasure to have a kid, with my husband being so old? She said that to herself, and then God changes, the words, and it's kind of like trying to create shalom bayit. From these parashas, we also learn shalom bayit. So God tells a little white lie, so then Abraham doesn't know that Sarah thought about that, right? So sometimes a white lie is okay, because we see from God that he doesn't want to have a fight between the two of them, and that's so important as well. And the last thing that can happen, that happened here in the parasha, is that Kedat Yitzchak. Interestingly enough, is that after, he woke up in the morning, he takes the lad, and they say the lad, but at the same time, the if you really count, at that time, Isaac might have been probably 37 years old. So he was not a lad anymore. We don't think about like an 8-year-old, being holding hands with daddy when he's going to go and tie him up, in a rope, and then he's going to get killed or sacrificed. So we learned also that after the situation, that different midrashim that said that Sarah dies because of that. She can't believe that this man who is so chesed, so loving kindness all the time, who is so humble, at the same time still have that kind of impulsivity that even think about taking the only son, right, Isaac, who's supposedly to be the descendant of the whole people of Israel, right? I mean, the ancestor, and having descendants and having Zerah, etc. And then Sarah cannot believe that this is happening. So after this episode, we see that Abraham doesn't have any conversation with God anymore. We know from this, after this episode, that Isaac doesn't speak with Abraham anymore until Abraham dies. There's no conversation, but he shows up for the funeral. We know also that Abraham and Sarah do not talk anymore. There's no conversation there. So it's just interesting, to think. And there are rabbis, who might have speculated with this idea that this might have been the first real divorce in history, in the Torah, in the Bible. And but Sarah is a very important thing. And let me tell you just one relationship I just want to share with you of these two people. And it's related to the number 100. Remember how old 99 was when he got his circumcision? And then Abraham was 100 years old when he got Isaac. 100 is an important number for us. And let me show you here. Let's see what you're seeing. Yes, it's a very important number, 100, and this is from a class from Abraham Ashkenazi from Shomrim Laboker in Mexico. He's a teacher of Kabbalah, and I just, I took I had the chutzpah, to really get a screenshot of this, because I thought it was very good. That's why it's in Spanish there, but it says that appears here the strength of the number 100. So the number 100, it's interesting because Rabbi Isaac Luria, who is the Arizal, the Ari Kadosh, he said that the name Abraham can easily, be also equals to, if you take the same letters and you just switch the letters to create a word or two words, bar me'ah. Bar me'ah means someone who is son, it means that is 100 years old. And so we know that Abraham is 100 when he got Isaac. And we know that 100 is the Sefirot. Remember the Sefirot, the tree of life is 10 Sefirot, 10 emanations. So each of those have also it has also one tree of life in each of the emanations, in each of the Sefirot. So 10 times 10 equals to a complete system. And as it says here, it's a perfect cycle. So that means that we can connect with that force. Now, I want to show you now something so cool to finish, to see why it's so important, what Sarah had to give us. The name Sarah is, in Hebrew, the gematria, the playing with the letters and the word, and the word is 505. Now, I want you to see this. I don't remember well now. When I was in Sfat, there was a jeweler maker who showed us like a little beautiful stone that he curved. We didn't buy that one, but this is exactly what it showed up in that beautiful golden jewel. It's that, I don't know if it was Azulay or Abulafia, who were two very important Kabbalists, who found the 10 by 10, if you see here, 10 by 10 over here, right? So it's 10 by 10. And you have 100 numbers here, and they're not repeated. Not only one is repeated. So you have 1, 2 here, but 3 might be in another place. But he accommodated this, that it doesn't matter where you look at from, wherever place you look it from, it doesn't matter, that you get the 505 making the sum, an addition of every single number, whether it's horizontally, whether it's vertically, whether it's in diagonal, you get 505. It's just amazing. It's just amazing. It's just very interesting when I look at this. And then I asked this jeweler maker, who was also a Kabbalist, how that, what does it mean? And he said that means balance. That means balance. 505 is also something even beyond all this. This is just amazing. Balance means that Sarah is the representation of balance in life. So not only that, listen to what your wife says, but Sarah might be also a representation of many women in the world who might have been overlooked because of her beauty outside and inside. She might have had being a victim of a husband who is so impulsive, who doesn't consult, and then all of a sudden goes for it. And Sarah is also someone who is used somehow here and there, by her husband also to accomplish certain things, and she doesn't say a word, but God is the one who has to say, look, you messed up already. Listen to your wife. Sarah is 505. And if you do 505 times 3, how do you have 3 angels who came to visit her? And 505, what do you get? 15, 15, right? There you go, you get 15, 15. What might have been 15, 15? And I want to show you this because it's just amazing. And hopefully I can find it here. I just want to show you very quickly. It's not this, here it is. Just at the beginning of this amazing explanation, it says all about Sarah. Let's examine the names of the angel. Michael gives Sarah the news of Isaac. Gabriel came to destroy Sodom. And Raphael came to heal Abraham. If you look at Sarah, times 3. 3 times Sarah, right? Is 15, 15. And it equals to Michael came for Sarah. Gabriel came for Sodom. And Raphael came for Abraham. equals also 3 times Sarah. So Sarah is, as you hear, this places Sarah clearly as the center of everything that happens in our portion. So I hope that we can learn from this, and I wish you Shabbat Shalom to everyone. From now on, the classes will be just from 2 to 2:30 in English y 2:30 a 3 en español. Bye bye.